3 months ago, Jiwoo scrubbed blood from marble floors. Tonight, she was the reason men in $10,000 suits were sweating through their silk. The private dining room on the 47th floor of the Signal Seoul glowed like a jewel box suspended in the night sky. Rain streaked down floor-to-ceiling windows, turning the city below into a watercolor of neon and glass. 5 men sat around a table that cost more than most people earned in a year, and Jiwoo, the only woman in the room, the most dangerous person at this table. She lifted her wine glass, letting the Bordeaux catch the light. Across from her, Director Huang of the Busan contingent hadn't touched his drink. His knuckles were white against the table's black lacquer surface. "You're asking for 30%, Jiwoo said softly. Her Korean had lost its working-class edges over the past 3 months. Dae-hyun's linguist had coached her personally. Now she spoke like she was born in Gangnam, every syllable, precise as a knife cut. For territory you don't control, for distribution routes you didn't build, for protection you can't provide. Director Huang's jaw tightened. The Huang family has operated in Busan for 3 generations. Operated, she interrupted, setting down her glass with a soft click that somehow silenced the room. Past tense, because 6 weeks ago, your supply chain collapsed when the port authority discovered your primary warehouse. Strange timing, wasn't it? Right after you refused our partnership terms. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Jiwoo leaned back in her chair, the movement deliberate. The dress she wore tonight was Alexander McQueen, black silk that moved like water, with a neckline that suggested power rather than seduction. Her hair was pinned in a style that took 2 hours to achieve and was designed to look effortless. The jade earrings brushing her collarbones were a gift from Dae-hyun last week. Each one cost more than her childhood apartment. "Are you?" Director Huang's voice shook slightly. "Are you implying the Kang Syndicate was behind?" "I'm implying nothing, Director Huang Nim." The honorific was perfectly placed, a razor wrapped in silk. "I'm simply observing that fortune favors those who understand the current landscape, and right now, that landscape is changing." One of his men, younger, stupider, leaned forward. "You think because you warmed Kang Dae-hyun's bed for a few months, you can speak for the syndicate? You're just a—" He didn't finish the sentence. Because Dae-hyun moved, he'd been standing by the windows this entire time, a shadow in a Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than a luxury sedan. Jiwoo hadn't needed him here for this negotiation, but he'd insisted on watching. Now he stood behind her chair, one hand resting lightly on her shoulder. The touch was possessive, protective, a silent declaration that vibrated through the room like a tuning fork. "Finish that sentence," Dae-hyun said quietly, "and they'll be cleaning your blood off this table before dessert arrives." His voice was cold, refined, absolutely lethal. The young enforcer went pale. Director Huang stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "This is disrespectful. We came here in good faith." "You came here," Jiwoo said, still seated, still perfectly calm, "because your organization is dying. Your ports are compromised. Your political connections are under investigation. Your 3rd largest revenue stream disappeared when the Cheongdam distribution network was absorbed by the Kim family last month." She paused. "With our blessing." She could feel Dae-hyun's pride in the tension of his fingers against her shoulder. 3 months ago, she hadn't known the difference between a distribution network and a supply chain. Now she could dismantle a criminal empire with spreadsheet analysis and strategic patience. Invisibility had taught her to notice everything. Power had taught her what to do with that information. "We're offering you a lifeline," she continued. 15% profit share on all Busan operations, full logistical support, protection from the prosecution efforts that are, coincidentally, intensifying around independent organizations. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "In exchange, you fold your territory into the Kang network, completely, no exceptions." That's not a partnership, Director Huang spat. That's annexation. Yes, Jiwoo agreed simply. It is. The rain intensified outside, drumming against the glass. Below them, Seoul pulsed with light, crimson, gold, electric blue. The city looked beautiful from up here, clean, organized, nothing like the blood-soaked chaos that actually ran through its veins. Director Huang stared at her, like she was a creature he didn't recognize. 3 months ago, he wouldn't have seen her at all. She would have been invisible. The woman who scrubbed his wine stains, emptied his ashtrays, existed only as a function. Now, she was the woman who held his empire's survival in her perfectly manicured hands. You have 48 hours, Jiwoo said, rising from her seat. The silk of her dress whispered against her skin. After that, our offer expires. And Director Huang Nim? She met his eyes directly. When we absorb your territory without your cooperation, the profit share drops to 0. We're being generous because we prefer efficiency over bloodshed. But make no mistake, your organization belongs to us whether you accept this offer or not. This is simply your opportunity to survive the transition. She turned toward the door. Dae-hyun's hand slid from her shoulder to the small of her back, a gesture that looked affectionate, but functioned as a claim. Mine, it said. Under my protection. Untouchable. They were almost to the exit when Director Huang's voice cut through the room. They're calling you the Queen of Seoul's Underworld. His tone was ugly, mocking. Do you really think they'll accept you? You're nobody. You came from nothing. The old families will never. Jiwoo paused at the threshold, glancing back over her shoulder. The old families, she said softly, are dying. They're slow, bureaucratic, stuck in hierarchies that don't adapt. Her smile was sharp enough to draw blood. I was invisible for 26 years, Director. I know exactly how much power there is in being underestimated. And now? She let the pause breathe. Now I'm the most visible woman in Seoul. Every move I make is analyzed. Every word I speak carries weight. I went from nothing to untouchable in 3 months. She stepped fully into the hallway, her heels clicking against marble. Imagine what I'll become in 3 more. The elevator descended in silence. Dae-hyun stood beside Jiwoo, his reflection sharp in the polished steel doors. He hadn't spoken since they left the dining room, but she could feel his satisfaction radiating like heat. You didn't need me there, he finally said as they passed the 30th floor. No, she agreed. I didn't. But I came anyway. Yes. Do you know why? She met his eyes in their shared reflection. Because watching me destroy them turns you on. The corner of his mouth lifted, barely, but it was there. Dae-hyun didn't smile often. When he did, it was dangerous. That, he murmured, stepping closer. And because I wanted them to see exactly what happens to anyone who disrespects what's mine. His hand found her waist, pulling her back against him. The elevator continued its smooth descent, but they were suspended in this moment, caught between the sky and the earth, between who she was and who she'd become. You've learned well, he said against her ear. His voice was low, intimate, edged with that possessive darkness that should have terrified her. It didn't. 3 months ago, it might have, when she was still the woman who scrubbed floors and made herself invisible, when she thought survival meant staying small. Now she knew differently. Survival meant becoming too powerful to eliminate. The elevator doors opened onto the underground garage. Their car was waiting, a black Genesis G90 with bulletproof glass and a driver who'd killed more men than she could count. As they settled into the back seat, Jiwoo's phone vibrated. A message from Min Seo, Dae-hyun's head of intelligence. 3 organizations refused meetings with you this week. All cited traditional concerns. The coalition is forming faster than expected. She deleted the message, her expression unchanged. Dae-hyun noticed anyway. He noticed everything about her. Problems? He asked. Nothing I can't handle. His eyes narrowed slightly. Ji-woo? The way he said her name, it was a command and a caress simultaneously. 3 months, and he still made her pulse quicken with a single word. Some of the old families are resistant, she admitted. They don't like that an outsider is sitting beside the Kang throne. They'll adapt or disappear. And if they choose to fight? Dae-hyun's hand found hers, his fingers threading through hers with a gentleness that contradicted everything he was. Then we'll remind them why the Kang Syndicate has ruled Seoul for 3 generations. Together. 3 months ago, she'd been his captive, his tool, his unwilling accomplice in reclaiming an empire. Now she was his partner, his queen, his obsession. The car glided through rain-slicked streets, carrying them back toward the penthouse where this all began, where she'd found him bleeding out on marble floors, where he'd locked the biometric door and changed her life forever. She should have hated him for that. Instead, she'd claimed his world as her own. But as Seoul's lights blurred past the windows, Ji-woo couldn't shake the feeling that had been growing all week. The sense that something was shifting in the shadows, that enemies were circling with more than just traditional concerns. That someone knew something they shouldn't. Her phone vibrated again. Unknown number. No message, just a photo. She opened it. The world stopped. It was a photograph. Old, faded. 2 people standing in front of a modest apartment building she recognized from childhood. Her parents. And written across the bottom in red ink. Did you really think you could erase who you are? Ji-woo Park? Or should I call you by your real name? Her hand tightened around the phone. Every instinct she'd honed over 3 months of surviving in this world screamed danger. Someone knew. Someone was watching. And the empire she'd helped build, the throne she'd claimed beside Dae-hyun, was suddenly far more fragile than the glass towers surrounding them. Ji-woo? Dae-hyun's voice cut through her panic. What is it? She looked up at him. This man who'd trapped her, protected her, possessed her. This man she'd chosen to stand beside even when he gave her freedom. And for the first time since she stopped being invisible, she lied to him. Nothing, she said, deleting the photo with shaking fingers. Just spam. The car turned onto the private road leading to the penthouse. Behind them, Seoul glittered like a beautiful, deadly promise. And somewhere in that sprawling city, someone was hunting her. Ji-woo has just claimed her throne. But the real danger is just beginning. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the moment her past catches up with her. I love seeing our community grow. Let me know in the comments where in the world you're watching from today. Are you in the US, Philippines, India, UK? Drop your flag below. Ji-woo didn't sleep that night. Dae-hyun did? Deeply. The way he only slept when she was beside him. One arm draped across her waist, his breathing steady against the back of her neck. The penthouse was silent, except for the rain that hadn't stopped since they'd returned from the signal. She stared at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching Seoul's lights refract through water and glass. 3 months ago, she would have found this view beautiful, aspirational even. Now, it just looked like a cage made of diamonds. Her phone was on the nightstand, screen dark. She'd deleted the photo, but she could still see it burned into her retinas. Her mother's smile, her father's hand on her shoulder. The apartment building in Nohwongu, where she'd grown up. Before the fire, before the foster homes, before she learned to make herself invisible to survive. Did you really think you could erase who you are, Ji-woo Park? The question looped through her mind like a virus. Because the answer was yes. She had thought she'd erased her. That frightened girl who scrubbed floors and kept her head down? Who answered to a name she'd chosen herself because her real name carried too much pain. Ji-woo Park wasn't who she'd been born as. And someone knew it. Dae-hyun shifted behind her, his arm tightening reflexively. Even in sleep he was possessive. Even unconscious he held on. She should wake him. Tell him everything. He had resources she couldn't imagine. Intelligence networks that spanned from Seoul to Singapore. Analysts who could trace a digital fingerprint through a dozen proxy servers. Enforcers who made problems disappear. But she didn't. Because for the first time since she'd chosen to stay in this world, she wasn't sure she could trust him with the truth. Not until she knew what that truth actually was. Dawn broke gray and cold. Dae-hyun woke at precisely 6 a.m., the way he always did. His internal clock was military precise, a remnant of whatever training forged him into the silent enforcer of the Kang Syndicate. You didn't sleep, he observed, his voice rough with mourning. It wasn't a question. Negotiation adrenaline, Ji-woo lied, turning to face him. I kept replaying Director Hwang's expression when I told him we were annexing his territory. A small smile touched his lips. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The gesture was tender, dangerous. Everything about Dae-hyun existed in that contradiction. You enjoyed it, he said. Yes. Good. He pulled her closer, his mouth finding the curve of her neck. Power looks beautiful on you. 3 months, and he could still make her breath catch. 3 months, and her body still responded to him like a tuning fork struck at exactly the right frequency. But this morning, when he kissed her, she was thinking about the photograph, and she hated herself for it. Dae-hyun left at 7:30 for a meeting with the Kang Group's legitimate board of directors. The syndicate's criminal operations were hidden beneath layers of corporate respectability. Hotels, real estate development, private equity firms that moved money like water through pipes. Ji-woo was expected at the penthouse office at 9 a.m. for her daily briefing with Min-seo, which gave her 90 minutes. She waited until the elevator doors closed behind Dae-hyun until she heard the pneumatic hiss that meant he descended past the security floor. Then she moved. The penthouse had a private study that Dae-hyun rarely used. It was decorated like everything else in his world. Minimalist, expensive, sharp. Black walnut desk, leather chair, a single painting on the wall that was probably worth more than most people's houses, and a safe hidden behind it. Ji-woo had learned the combination 6 weeks ago. Not because Dae-hyun gave it to her, because she'd watched him open it one night when he thought she was asleep. Old habits from her invisible days. Notice everything. Remember everything. Survive by knowing what others don't realize you know. The safe opened with a whisper of precision engineering. Inside, passports, 3 different identities, bearer bonds, a Glock 19, and a tablet that was never connected to any network. She took the tablet. It booted up to a secure interface. No internet connection, just locally stored files. Dae-hyun used it for information he didn't want touching the cloud. Records that couldn't be hacked because they weren't digitally accessible. She navigated to the archived intelligence reports, her fingers shaking slightly. She knew what she was looking for. The Kang Syndicate maintained files on everyone significant in Seoul's underworld. Allies, enemies, neutral parties, and, apparently, the backgrounds of people who got too close to the throne. Had Dae-hyun investigated her? The search function yielded nothing under Ji-woo Park. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. Maybe she'd been paranoid. Maybe whoever sent that photo was just... Then she tried her birth name. The name she hadn't spoken aloud in 15 years. The screen populated, and her world fractured. File. Han Ji-yeon. Status, deceased. Official. /unconfirmed. Internal connection. Potential witness to Kang Syndicate operation, February 2009. Parents: Han Sung-min, deceased. Han Mi-young, deceased. Incident: traffic accident, No Wongu, February 14, 2009. Official ruling: Vehicular manslaughter, driver fled scene. Internal notes: timing coincides with territorial consolidation during Kang leadership transition. Recommend monitoring for surviving family members. File sealed by director Kang Dae-hyun, deceased, 2009. The tablet nearly slipped from her hands. Kang Dae-hyun, Dae-hyun's father. The man who built the Kang Syndicate into what it was today. The man who died 5 years ago, leaving the empire to his sons. The man who sealed the file on her parents' deaths. Potential witness to Kang's syndicate operation. The words blurred as tears she couldn't afford to shed burned her eyes. Her parents hadn't died in a random hit and run. They were murdered, and the Kang family knew. Jiwoo didn't know how long she sat there, staring at the screen. Long enough that the gray morning light shifted to something almost bright. Long enough that her phone vibrated 3 times with messages she didn't read. Long enough for the foundation of everything she'd built to turn to sand. The penthouse suddenly felt different. The luxury she'd claimed as her own, the silk sheets, the designer dresses, the jade earrings brushing her collarbones, all of it was tainted now. Built on blood. Maybe her blood. Certainly her parents' blood. A sound from the hallway snapped her back to the present. The elevator. She moved on pure instinct, the same survival reflex that kept her alive through foster homes and poverty, and the dangerous climb from invisible to untouchable. The tablet went back in the safe. The painting returned to perfect alignment. She was out of the study and in the living room before the elevator doors opened. Min Seo stepped out, impeccable as always in a charcoal suit. She was Dae-hyun's head of intelligence, 40-something, brilliant, completely ruthless. She and Jiwoo had developed a strange professional respect over the past 3 months. Jiwoo-si, she greeted, her eyes scanning Jiwoo with the precision of a woman who noticed everything. You look pale. Are you unwell? I'm fine, Jiwoo said automatically. Just tired from last night's negotiation. Min Seo accepted this with a slight nod, setting her tablet on the glass coffee table. Director Huang accepted our terms an hour ago. The annexation will be formalized by end of week. Good. There's something else? Min Seo's expression shifted, subtly, but Jiwoo had learned to read the micro-expressions of people in Dae-hyun's circle. We've intercepted chatter suggesting a coalition is forming. 5 families, possibly 6. The common factor appears to be concern about your influence. They don't like that an outsider is sitting beside the Kang throne. Do we have names? Jiwoo asked, forcing her voice to remain steady. Some. The Jung family from Incheon, the Yoon organization, a few independents who are nervous about consolidation. Min Seo paused. And there are rumors that someone significant is returning to Seoul. Someone who left years ago. Jiwoo's pulse quickened. Who? We're still confirming, but... Min Seo's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, and her expression went carefully blank. Excuse me, she said, stepping toward the windows to take the call. Jiwoo watched her reflection in the glass. Watched her spine straighten. Watched her say, yes, Director Kang Nim, in a tone that suggested this was important. When she returned, her professional mask was perfect. Change of plans, she said. Dae-hyun Nim requests your presence at the office immediately. There's been a development. What kind of development? He didn't specify. Just said. She hesitated, which was unusual for Min Seo. He said to bring you to the executive floor, and that you should prepare for a family matter. Family matter. The Kang family was small now. Dae-hyun's father was dead. His mother lived in seclusion in Jeju, which meant no, it couldn't be. But Min Seo's expression told Jiwoo she was right. Kang Min-ho is back, Jiwoo said quietly. Min Seo didn't confirm or deny. She didn't need to. Dae-hyun's younger brother, the one who'd left Seoul 3 years ago after a vicious power struggle. the one who was exiled to the European operations rather than risk a war between brothers. The one who, according to every briefing Ji-woo had read, absolutely should not be returning to Seoul. Her phone vibrated again. She glanced down. Unknown number. Another message. The prodigal son returns. Isn't it funny how timing works, Han Ji-yeon? Or should I keep calling you Ji-woo? I wonder what your beloved Dae-hyun would say if he knew who was really sleeping in his bed. See you soon. The phone nearly shattered in her grip. Ji-woo-si. Min Seo's voice cut through the static in her head. Are you certain you're well? Ji-woo looked up at her, this woman who could destroy her with a single background check. This woman who served the family that killed her parents. And she smiled, because she'd spent 15 years being invisible. She knew how to hide. I'm perfect, she said. Let's go meet the family. The Genesis G90 cut through Seoul's morning traffic like a knife through silk. Ji-woo sat in the back seat, watching the city scroll past. Office workers rushing to their corporate towers, students in uniform chattering at bus stops, normal people living normal lives. She used to be one of them. Now she was the woman they'd fear if they knew she existed. Her phone was in her purse, silenced but present, like a bomb waiting to detonate. Han Ji-yeon. Her real name felt foreign in her mind, like a dress she wore lifetimes ago, now pulled from the back of a closet, moth-eaten and strange. She'd buried her, cremated her in the same fire that killed her parents, or so she'd thought. Started fresh. Became Ji-woo Park, the invisible cleaner who scrubbed away the sins of the wealthy. But ghosts didn't stay buried, and someone was digging up her grave. The car pulled into the underground garage of the Kang Group headquarters, a glass tower in Junggu that pierced the sky like a shard of ice. They took a private elevator to the executive floor, where the air smelled like leather and power and old money. Dae-hyun was waiting in his office. So was the brother she'd only seen in photographs. Kang Min-ho stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, backlit by Seoul's sprawl. He was younger than Dae-hyun by 3 years, which made him 28 to Dae-hyun's 31. Where Dae-hyun was all sharp angles and controlled violence, Min-ho was elegant, beautiful even, European tailoring, styled hair, a smile that probably charmed shareholders and seduced rivals. That smile turned on her like a spotlight. So, this is the famous Ji-woo, he said in perfect Korean edged with just a hint of an accent. The woman who appeared from nowhere and conquered Seoul in 3 months. I've heard so much about you. He crossed the office, extending his hand. She took it. His grip was firm, calculated. And when his thumb brushed across her knuckles, so briefly she almost missed it, she felt the message. I know. It's a pleasure, Min-ho-si, Ji-woo said evenly. The pleasure, he replied, his eyes never leaving hers, is entirely mine. After all, it's not every day you meet a ghost. The temperature in the room dropped. Dae-hyun moved then, positioning himself beside Ji-woo. Not quite between them, but close enough that the message was clear. Min-ho just arrived from Geneva, he said, his hand finding the small of her back. He'll be staying in Seoul for the foreseeable future, family business. How wonderful, Ji-woo murmured. I'm sure there's much to catch up on. Min-ho's smile sharpened. Oh, you have no idea, he said. I've learned so many interesting things in Europe. The networks you build, the secrets you uncover. His gaze flicked to Dae-hyun, then back to Ji-woo. It's amazing what the old families will tell you when they trust you. Ji-woo's blood turned to ice water, but she smiled, because she wasn't the invisible cleaner anymore. She was the queen, and queens didn't show fear, even when the executioner was standing right in front of them. The private dining room at Mingle's was reserved for people who didn't exist in public records. Ji-woo had been here twice before, once to negotiate with a Chinese triad representative, once to meet with a prosecutor who needed persuading. Both times, she'd walked out with exactly what she came for. Both times, she'd felt in control. Tonight was different. Tonight, she was sitting across from a man who knew her real name. The restaurant occupied the top floor of a building in Cheongdam-dong, all dark wood and carefully calibrated lighting. The kind of place where a single meal cost more than a month's rent in the apartment where Han Ji-yeon had grown up. Where Jiwoo Park had learned to be invisible, but Han Ji-yeon was dead. At least, she was supposed to be. Dae-hyun sat at the head of the table, his posture relaxed in a way that suggested absolute control. He'd changed into a different suit for dinner, midnight blue brioni that made his eyes look almost black. His hand rested on the table near Jiwoo's, close enough that his pinky finger occasionally brushed hers. A small gesture, a claim. Minho sat across from them, perfectly at ease. He'd ordered in flawless Korean with a sommelier's precision, selecting a wine that probably cost more than the car that brought them here. Everything about him was calibrated, polished, dangerous in a completely different way than his brother. Where Dae-hyun was a blade, Minho was poison. "So tell me," Minho said, swirling his wineglass, "how does one go from cleaning penthouses to running annexation negotiations? It's quite the career trajectory." His smile was pleasant. His eyes were not. "Hard work," Jiwoo replied evenly, "and excellent mentorship." She could feel Dae-hyun's attention sharpen beside her. He was watching the interaction like a predator sensing movement in tall grass, aware something was happening, not yet sure what it meant. "Mentorship," Minho repeated, as if tasting the word. "Yes, my brother has always been good at identifying potential, even in unexpected places." He leaned back as the waiter placed the first course in front of them. "Tell me, Jiwoo-si, where did you grow up? I don't think I've heard your origin story." The question landed like a knife between her ribs. "Here and there," she said lightly. "Seoul, mostly. Nothing interesting." "Oh, I doubt that." Minho's smile widened. "Everyone has an interesting story. It's just a matter of knowing where to look. Take me, for example. 3 years in Europe, and I've learned that the most fascinating people are often the ones with the least documented pasts." Dae-hyun's hand moved, covering hers completely. The gesture looked affectionate. It was a warning. "Minho," he said quietly, "if you have something to say it directly." "I'm simply making conversation, Hyungnim." The honorific was perfectly placed, but there was an edge to it, a suggestion of mockery. Getting to know the woman, who's become so integral to our family's operations. Surely you can't fault me for being curious about someone who appeared out of nowhere and became indispensable in 3 months. "She didn't appear out of nowhere," Dae-hyun said. His voice was calm. His eyes were not. "She was already there. I simply recognized what others overlooked." "Yes, your eye for hidden value has always been exceptional." Minho took a sip of his wine. "Though I have to wonder, did you run a full background check? Or were you too distracted by other qualities?" The temperature at the table dropped. Jiwoo knew what Minho was doing. He was probing, testing, trying to determine how much Dae-hyun knew about her real identity. And if Dae-hyun didn't know, if he hadn't run a deep investigation into Han Ji-yeon, then Minho held all the cards. "I know everything I need to know," Dae-hyun said, his thumb stroking across Jiwoo's knuckles. "And if you're suggesting I made a mistake, you should choose your next words very carefully." The threat hung in the air like silk over a razor. But Minho just laughed. Light, easy, completely unbothered. "No mistake, Hung. Just admiration. After all, it takes real vision to elevate someone so completely. To give them access to our networks, our operations, our family secrets." His gaze flicked to Jiwoo. "That kind of trust is rare. Precious, even. I hope it's not misplaced." Jiwoo met his eyes steadily. "Your concern is touching, Minho-si. But I assure you, I understand exactly how rare trust is in this world, and how quickly it can be destroyed. Do you? Minho's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition. Respect, maybe. Or the acknowledgement that she understood the game he was playing. Then you're wiser than most. Trust is such a fragile thing. One secret, one lie, one carefully hidden truth. He paused, letting the words breathe. And everything shatters. Dae-hyun's hand tightened on hers. Not painful, but firm, possessive. If you know something relevant to this family's security, he said, his voice dropping into that deadly quiet register that preceded violence. Say it now. Otherwise, stop circling and eat your damn food. For a moment, the brothers stared at each other across the table. 3 years separated, but not forgotten. Whatever power struggle had sent Minho to Europe still simmered between them like a live wire. Then Minho smiled and picked up his fork. You're right, of course. Forgive me. Jet lag makes me philosophical. He took a bite of the carefully plated fish in front of him. This is excellent. The chef here trained in Tokyo, didn't he? I remember when this place first opened. Father brought us here once. Before... He trailed off deliberately. Well, before everything changed. The mention of their father shifted something in Dae-hyun's expression. Just for a moment. A flicker of something that might have been grief or anger, or both. Jiwoo felt it like a physical blow. File sealed by director Kang Dae-hyun, deceased. 2009. The man who'd sealed the file on her parents' murder. The man who'd built this empire on blood and secrets. The man these two brothers had called father. She was sitting at a table with his sons, pretending to be something she wasn't, hiding a truth that could destroy everything. Father had excellent taste. Minho continued, oblivious, or pretending to be, to Jiwoo's internal collapse. In restaurants, in business opportunities, in knowing which threats to eliminate before they became problems. His eyes found Jiwoo's again. He was very thorough about protecting the family, almost obsessive about it, really. Kept files on everyone, every potential threat, every loose end. That's enough, Dae-hyun said. Is it? Minho set down his fork. Because I've been reviewing those files, Hyung, the ones father kept, the sealed archives, very illuminating reading. You'd be surprised what I found. Jiwoo's heart stopped. Dae-hyun was watching his brother now with complete focus. You had no authorization to access those files. I'm family. I don't need authorization. Minho's smile was sharp. Besides, someone should know what skeletons are buried in our foundation. Especially now, when we're expanding so aggressively. When we're bringing new people into our inner circle. His gaze slid to Jiwoo. You never know when the past might come back to haunt you. The waiter arrived with the second course, breaking the tension like a knife through silk. Everyone smiled politely as plates were exchanged. Wine was poured, compliments were offered. The perfect picture of a family dinner. Underneath, Jiwoo could feel the foundation cracking. Minho excused himself after the main course, claiming he needed to take a call from Geneva. The moment he left the table, Dae-hyun turned to Jiwoo. What is he doing? He asked quietly. Playing games, she said. It wasn't entirely a lie. With you specifically. It wasn't a question. Why? Because I'm not who you think I am. Because your father ordered my parents killed. Because everything we've built is a lie. Because I'm an outsider, she said instead. He doesn't trust me. He wants to prove you made a mistake bringing me into the family. Dae-hyun's jaw tightened. You're not a mistake. I know. Do you? His hand came up, cupping her face with a gentleness that contrasted everything he was capable of. Because if he's making you doubt, he's not, Jiwoo said, leaning into his touch, even as guilt clawed at her throat. I know exactly what I am to you, what we've built together. He can't take that away. But even as she said it, she wondered if it was true, because Minho could take everything away. One conversation with Dae-hyun, one revelation about Han Ji-yeon, one truth about who was really sleeping in the Kang family's bed. And then what? Would Dae-hyun protect her? Or would he do what his father would have done? Eliminate the threat before it became a problem? I don't trust him, Dae-hyun said, his thumb stroking her cheekbone. I never have. He left because I gave him the choice, exile or elimination. He chose exile. But he's always been ambitious, always wanted what I had. Then why let him come back? Because he's still family. And because, Dae-hyun's expression darkened, because I want to know what he's planning. Better to have him here, where I can watch him, than in Europe building alliances I can't see. Ji-woo understood the logic. It was the same reason Dae-hyun had kept her close 3 months ago. Keep your enemies closer than your friends. Control the threat by containing it. But now she was on the other side of that equation. She was the contained threat. Minho returned a few minutes later, all apologies and charm. Sorry about that. Time zones are a nightmare. Where were we? Dessert? Dae-hyun said flatly. Ah, yes. The best part. Minho settled back into his chair. You know what I missed most about Seoul? The way everything here has layers. Like a good dessert, sweet on top, but complex underneath. Europe is so straightforward. People say what they mean. Very efficient, but boring. I prefer efficiency, Dae-hyun said. Of course you do. You always have. Minho accepted a plate from the waiter, some architectural construction of chocolate and gold leaf. But, Ji-woo-see, what about you? Do you prefer directness, or do you appreciate the art of subtlety? It was a test, another probe. I appreciate effectiveness, Ji-woo said carefully. Directness when it serves the goal. Subtlety when it doesn't. The tool should match the task. Spoken like a true strategist. Minho took a bite of dessert, his expression thoughtful. You really have learned well. Tell me, do you ever miss your old life? Before all this? It must have been simpler. Quieter. No, she said, and that, at least, was completely true. I don't miss it at all. Not even a little? Not even the parts of yourself you had to leave behind to become who you are now? The question hit like a bullet, because that was exactly what she'd done. Left Han Ji-yeon behind, buried her, became Ji-woo Park, and then became something else entirely. The queen beside Dae-hyun's throne. But Minho wasn't asking about Ji-woo Park. He was asking about Han Ji-yeon. We all leave things behind, she said quietly. That's how we grow, how we survive. Survive, Minho repeated. Interesting word choice. Most people would say succeed or evolve. But you said survive, as if you've been running from something. Dae-hyun's hand slammed on the table, not loud but definitive. Enough, he said. I don't know what game you're playing, Minho, but it ends now. Ji-woo is under my protection. That makes her untouchable. Even to you. Especially to you. The brothers stared at each other across the table. Minho was the first to break eye contact, looking down at his dessert with a small smile. No game, Hyung. Just conversation. Getting to know the family. He glanced up at Ji-woo. But you're right, of course. She's under your protection. Which means she's completely safe. As long as that protection holds. The implication hung in the air like poison gas. As long as he doesn't find out who she really is. They left Mingles an hour later, stepping out into Seoul's night. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the streets slick and reflective. Neon signs bled color across wet pavement. Crimson, electric blue, gold. Beautiful and deadly, like everything in this city. Minho had his own car waiting. He embraced Dae-hyun briefly, a formality that looked affectionate and felt like two predators circling, and then turned to Jiwoo. "It was lovely to finally meet you," he said, taking her hand. His grip was just slightly too tight. "I'm sure we'll be seeing much more of each other. After all, we're family now." He leaned in, as if to kiss her cheek in the European style he'd adopted. But what he whispered in her ear was pure soul venom. "I know what you are, Han Ji-yeon, and soon everyone else will too, unless you're very, very smart about what happens next." Then he was gone, sliding into his car with a final smile and wave. Jiwoo stood frozen on the sidewalk, her skin ice cold despite the humid night air. Dae-hyun's arm came around her waist, pulling her against him. "What did he say to you?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. She looked up at him. This man who'd trapped her, transformed her, possessed her. This man whose father had ordered her parents killed. This man she'd chosen to love despite everything. And she lied again. "Just that he looks forward to working together?" she said. Dae-hyun's eyes narrowed. He knew she wasn't telling him the whole truth, but he also knew better than to push when she'd made the decision to keep something private. "For now." "If he threatens you," Dae-hyun said quietly, "I need to know. Brother or not, no one touches what's mine." "I know," Jiwoo whispered. But as their car pulled into Seoul's glittering night, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing on the edge of a blade. On one side, the empire she'd claimed, the power she'd built, the man who'd made her untouchable. On the other, the truth. Her real name, the ghosts of her murdered parents. And Minho held the knife that would push her one way or the other. The only question was which side she'd fall to when he finally made his move. Jiwoo spent the next 3 days becoming a ghost in her own life. She attended meetings, smiled at the right moments, negotiated a weapons distribution agreement with a supplier from Vladivostok, had dinner with Dae-hyun every night, let him pull her into bed, let him possess her body the way he possessed everything else in his world. And the entire time she was planning, Minho's threat hung over her like a guillotine blade. "I know what you are, Han Ji-yeon, and soon everyone else will too." She had 2 choices: wait for him to destroy her, or find out the complete truth first. Arm herself with information, understand exactly what happened to her parents, and why. The file she'd found in Dae-hyun's safe had given her fragments. Potential witness to Kang Syndicate operation, file sealed by director Kang Dae-hyun. But fragments weren't enough. She needed the whole picture, which meant going deeper into the Kang family archives than she'd ever dared before. The opportunity came on a Thursday. Dae-hyun had a meeting in Busan, the formal annexation ceremony with Director Hwang's organization. He'd wanted Jiwoo to come, to stand beside him as the queen who'd engineered the acquisition. She'd pleaded a headache, a need for rest after the stress of Minho's return. He'd been reluctant to leave her, had studied her face with those dark, calculating eyes that saw too much. "You've been different since dinner," he'd said that morning, his thumb tracing her lower lip. Distant. "I'm fine," she'd lied, "just tired." If Minho said something to upset you, he didn't. Another lie. They were piling up now, a wall between them, built brick by brick from deception. "I promise. I just need a quiet day to myself." He'd kissed her then, deep, possessive, claiming. And she'd responded the way she always did. Because her body didn't know how to lie to him. Only her mind did. The helicopter took him to Gimpo Airport at 10 a.m. By 10:30, Jiwoo was in motion. The Kang Group's corporate headquarters in Junggu was a fortress disguised as a glass tower. 38 floors of legitimate business operations, and 3 floors that didn't officially exist. Sublevels accessible only by a private elevator that required biometric clearance and a rotating security code. Ji-woo had been to the archive level once before, 2 months ago, when Dae-hyun had taken her there personally to review intelligence on a rival family. He'd walked her through the security protocols, his hand on her back, his voice in her ear explaining the system. He'd been teaching her, giving her access to the family's deepest secrets. Now she was going to use that access against him. The elevator descended with a pneumatic hiss, dropping below the building's underground parking levels into spaces that existed only in blueprints locked in Dae-hyun's personal safe. The doors opened onto a corridor that looked like something from a private intelligence agency. Concrete, walls, LED lighting, air filtration systems that kept the temperature at exactly 18 degrees Celsius to preserve the documents stored here. A security guard sat at a desk 20 meters from the elevator. He looked up as Ji-woo approached, his expression shifting from alert to respectful recognition. "Ji-woo see," he greeted standing. "I wasn't informed you'd be accessing the archives today." "Last-minute research," she said smoothly, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who belonged here, someone untouchable. "Director Kang Dae-hyun asked me to pull some historical files for a meeting next week." A lie, but delivered with the absolute certainty of truth. The guard hesitated for just a moment, long enough that Ji-woo felt her pulse spike, then nodded. "Of course. Do you need assistance locating anything?" "No, thank you. I know where to look." She moved past him into the archive proper, a vast room lined with climate-controlled storage units. Some held physical files, i.e., old records from before everything went digital. Others contained hard drives and servers, air-gapped systems that held information too sensitive for any network. Ji-woo headed for the physical archives. She was looking for files from 2009. February 2009 to be specific. Incident. Traffic accident. Nowongu, February 14th, 2009. The month her parents died. The month Han Ji-yeon's world ended and the long invisible years began. The filing system was organized by year and operation code. It took her 20 minutes to find the right section. A row of banker's boxes labeled with years spanning the period when Dae-hyun's father had led the syndicate. 2009 was thick with documentation. The year of territorial consolidation during Kang leadership transition, according to the file she'd read. Ji-woo pulled down 3 boxes and carried them to a private reading room, a small glass-walled office with a single desk and chair. Her hands were shaking as she opened the first box. Inside, incident reports, surveillance photographs, financial records. The careful documentation of a criminal empire managing its expansion. She started reading. An hour later, Ji-woo understood. An hour later, she wished she didn't. The picture that emerged from the scattered documents was methodical, clinical, horrifying in its efficiency. February 2009. The Kang Syndicate had been absorbing smaller operations in Nowongu and Dobong-gu, consolidating control over northern Seoul's underground economy. There had been resistance, independent operators who didn't want to fold into the larger organization. One of those operators had been running a protection racket targeting small businesses, including a restaurant owned by Han Sung-min and Han Mi-young, Ji-woo's parents. According to the documents, her father had gone to the police, had given a statement about the protection payments, had named names, not knowing that some of those names were connected to operations the Kang Syndicate was in the process of absorbing. He'd made himself a witness, a liability. The decision to eliminate the threat had been made at the highest level. Director Kang Jae-won himself had signed off on it, his signature stark black ink on a document labeled Terminal Resolution. Targets: Han Sung-min, Han Mi-young. Method: vehicular accident, appear random. Collateral: one daughter, age 11, survives. Recommend monitoring, eliminate if she surfaces as threat. Ji-woo's vision blurred. Collateral. That's what she'd been? Collateral damage in a territorial consolidation. A loose end that was allowed to live only because she was deemed harmless. An 11-year-old girl, orphaned and invisible, not worth the resources to eliminate. The file included surveillance photos from after the accident, pictures of her at the funeral, small and lost in a black dress someone from social services had bought her, pictures of the foster home where she'd been placed, and then a note dated 6 months later. Subject Han Ji-yeon shows no signs of suspicious activity or investigation. Recommend passive monitoring only. Threat assessment: negligible. Negligible. She'd been so broken, so thoroughly destroyed by her parents' murder, that even the people who'd killed them had dismissed her as irrelevant. And they'd been right. For 15 years, she'd been irrelevant, invisible, too traumatized and powerless to be a threat to anyone, until Kang Dae-hyun had found her bleeding out in his penthouse, not her blood, but his, and decided to make her powerful. The irony was exquisite. The son of the man who'd killed her parents had given her the tools to destroy his empire, if she chose to use them. Ji-woo sat in the glass-walled room, surrounded by the documented evidence of her parents' murder, and felt something crack open inside her chest. Something that had been frozen for 3 months, maybe for 15 years, suddenly breaking apart. She'd fallen in love with the son of her parents' killer. She'd built a life beside him, claimed power through him, let him possess her, body and soul, while sleeping every night in a penthouse bought with blood money. Her parents' blood money. The sob that escaped her throat sounded like something dying. She didn't hear the door open, didn't hear the footsteps on the concrete floor, didn't know Dae-hyun was there until his voice cut through her breakdown like a blade. "What are you doing?" Ji-woo's head snapped up. He stood in the doorway of the reading room, still in the suit he'd worn to Busan. He must have come straight from the helicopter. Must have known, somehow, that something was wrong. Or maybe the security guard had called him. Either way, he was here. And the expression on his face was one she'd never seen before. Cold, calculating, absolutely lethal. The look he gave threats before he eliminated them. "Dae-hyun," she started, her voice breaking. What are you doing in the, archives?" he repeated, stepping into the room. His eyes went to the open boxes, the scattered files, the surveillance photos of an 11-year-old girl at her parents' funeral. "What are you looking for?" She could lie, should lie, deflect and distract, and buy herself time to think. But she was so tired of lying. "The truth," Ji-woo said quietly, "about who I really am." His expression didn't change. "Explain. My name isn't Ji-woo Park." The words came out steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "It's Han Ji-yeon. And 15 years ago, your father ordered my parents killed." The silence that followed was absolute. Dae-hyun didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at her with those dark, unreadable eyes, while the truth hung between them, like a grenade with the pin pulled. Then he stepped forward, grabbed one of the files from the desk, and started reading. Ji-woo watched him process the information, watched his jaw tighten as he read his father's signature on the kill order, watched something flicker across his face. Surprise, anger, recognition? She couldn't tell. When he finally looked up, his voice was deadly quiet. "How long have you known?" "I found the initial file a week ago. In your safe." "You went through my safe?" "Yes." "Without my knowledge, without my permission?" "Yes." "And you've been lying to me ever since?" Not a question, a statement of fact. "Yes," Ji-woo whispered. Dae-hyun set down the file with precise, controlled movements. "Stand up." She did. He crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, backing her against the glass wall. Not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the heat of his body, the barely controlled violence radiating from him. "Do you have any idea?" he said, his voice low and dangerous. "What you've just done?" I needed to know the truth. You've made yourself a threat. He slammed his hand against the glass beside her head, making her flinch. The moment you connected yourself to that file, you became a liability. Someone who knows too much. Someone who could use that information against this family. I'm not going to... How do I know that? The question was raw, angry. How do I know anything you've told me for the past 3 months is real? How do I know you didn't plan this from the beginning? That you didn't engineer our entire relationship to get close enough to destroy us? That's not what happened. Then what did happen, Ji-woo? Or should I call you Ji-yeon? He grabbed her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. Who the fuck are you? Really? I'm the woman you trapped in your penthouse, she said, her own anger finally breaking through the fear. The woman you forced to save your life. The woman you dragged into this world whether I wanted it or not. You made me powerful, Dae-hyun. You gave me access to your empire, your secrets, your bed. And now you're angry that I used those tools to find out why my parents were murdered? I didn't know. Your father knew. Your family knew. The Kang Syndicate built its northern territory on my parents' blood, and you profited from it. The words were spilling out now, 15 years of grief and rage finally finding their target. You want to know who I am. I'm the collateral damage you people dismissed as negligible. I'm the ghost you should have killed, but didn't think was worth the bullet. And I've spent 3 months falling in love with the son of the man who destroyed my entire world. The admission hung in the air like a gunshot. Dae-hyun's grip on her chin loosened, his expression shifting into something she couldn't read. You love me, he said quietly. Yes, Ji-woo whispered, hating herself for it. God help me, yes. And you think I'm going to let you walk away from this? I think you should. I think you should do what your father would have done and eliminate the threat before it becomes a problem. Is that what you want? His thumb brushed across her lower lip, the gesture achingly familiar. You want me to kill you? End this before it gets more complicated? I don't know what I want anymore. Liar. He leaned in, his mouth a breath away from hers. You want exactly what I want. Power. Revenge. Everything this city can give us. The only question is whether you're going to take it as Han Ji-yeon or as Ji-woo Park. They're the same person. No, Dae-hyun interrupted. They're not. Ji-yeon was a victim, powerless, dismissed as negligible. But Ji-woo? His smile was sharp, dangerous. Ji-woo is the Queen of Seoul's underworld. Ji-woo annexes territories and makes grown men sweat. Ji-woo stands beside me as an equal. Ji-woo is a lie, she said brokenly. Ji-woo is who you chose to become. His hand slid into her hair, gripping tight. And if you think I'm going to let you throw that away because of something my father did 15 years ago, you don't know me at all. Your father murdered my parents? Yes. The acknowledgement was simple, brutal. He did. And if he were still alive, I'd kill him myself for creating this situation. But he's dead, Ji-woo. He's been dead for 5 years, and his sins don't erase what we've built together. How can you say that? Tears were streaming down her face now, hot and unstoppable. How can you expect me to just forget? I don't expect you to forget. Dae-hyun's forehead pressed against hers, his voice dropping to something almost gentle. I expect you to choose, the past or the future, revenge or power, me or the ghost of the family you lost. That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair. His lips brushed hers, soft and devastating. But it's the choice you have, so choose, Ji-woo. Right now, do you walk away and burn everything we've built? Or do you stay and take your revenge by becoming so powerful that no one will ever dismiss you as negligible again? She stared at him, this man who'd trapped her and transformed her, and was now offering her a devil's bargain. Stay with the family that killed her parents, or walk away from the only power she'd ever had. "And if I stay," she whispered, "then we find out who sent you that photograph. We neutralize Minho's threat, and we take the Kang Syndicate so far beyond what my father built that his crimes become nothing but footnotes in our empire's history." His hand tightened in her hair. "Together, as equals. No more lies between us." "You say that now." "I mean it." The intensity in his eyes was absolute. "You think I care that you were Han Ji-yeon? That your parents were collateral damage in a consolidation I had nothing to do with? I care that you lied to me. I care that you've been investigating behind my back. But your past?" He kissed her, hard and claiming. "Your past makes you mine even more than you already were. Because now I'm the only thing standing between you and the people who'll want you dead when they find out who you really are." The truth of it hit her like ice water. Minho knew. And if Minho knew, he could tell the old families, could reveal that the queen beside Dae-hyun's throne was the daughter of people the Kang Syndicate had eliminated, could turn her from an asset into a liability that the entire underworld would want eliminated. The only person who could protect her now was Dae-hyun. The only person she could trust was the son of her parents' killer. The irony was exquisite and horrifying. "What about Minho?" she asked. "Minho is my problem. I'll handle him. He knows everything. Then we'll make sure his knowledge dies with him." Dae-hyun's expression went cold. "Lethal. Brother or not, no one threatens what's mine." "And Jiwoo?" He pulled back enough to look directly into her eyes. "You're mine. Han Ji-yeon, Jiwoo Park, whoever you want to be? You're mine. And I protect what's mine." She should hate him for the possessiveness, for the arrogance of claiming her even now after everything. Instead, she kissed him. Because he was right. She'd spent 15 years being powerless, 3 months being powerful, and she'd tasted enough of power to know she'd burn the world down before she went back to being invisible, even if it meant standing beside the son of her parents' killer. Even if it meant becoming something her parents would have hated. Even if it meant choosing revenge over justice. When they finally broke apart, Dae-hyun's thumb wiped away her tears. "No more secrets," he said. "No more secrets," she agreed. Another lie, because she could already feel new secrets forming in the space between them. The things she'd do to survive, the lines she'd cross for power, the person she was becoming in the pursuit of revenge. But those were secrets for another day. For now, she let him pull her close, let him hold her in the archives where the proof of her parents' murder was scattered across a desk. Let him whisper promises of protection and power and everything Seoul could give them. And she began to plan. Because Dae-hyun was wrong about one thing. She wasn't choosing between the past and the future. She was choosing both. She'd take the power he offered, build the empire at his side, become untouchable. And then, when she was strong enough, when she'd climbed high enough that no one could dismiss her as negligible ever again, she'd burn the Kang Syndicate to the ground, for her parents, for Han Ji-yeon, for every ghost that haunted the foundations of this beautiful, deadly city. But first, she had to survive Minho, and that meant becoming someone even more dangerous than the Queen of Seoul. It meant becoming the woman who could lie to the man she loved and make him believe every word. The thing about playing both sides, Jiwoo discovered, was that you had to be willing to lose everything. She sat in the back of a taxi in Itaewon, 3 blocks from where her actual destination was, wearing clothes she'd bought with cash from a burner account Dae-hyun didn't know existed. The driver didn't look at her twice. She'd made herself invisible again, dressed in the kind of unremarkable business casual that let her blend into Seoul's millions. Old skills, old instincts. Han Ji-yeon's survival mechanisms deployed by Jiwoo Park. It had been 4 days since the confrontation in the archives. 4 days since she'd chosen to stay. since she'd kissed Dae-hyun and promised no more secrets while already planning her next deception. 4 days of playing the perfect queen while building her own kingdom in the shadows. She paid the driver and stepped out into the late afternoon heat. The neighborhood was a maze of narrow streets and anonymous buildings, the kind of place where business happened off the books, where the old families met when they didn't want the Kang Syndicate's surveillance networks tracking their movements. Jiwoo had done her research. The meeting was in a Norebang 3 blocks east, rented under a shell company that traced back to the Young family from Incheon, the same family Min Seo had mentioned as part of the forming coalition, the same family that wanted her dead. She was walking directly into the wolves' den, and she was doing it alone. The Norebang's lobby was dingy, smelling of cigarette smoke and cheap cologne. A bored attendant barely looked up as Jiwoo gave the room number. 4th floor, private suite, paid for in advance. The elevator groaned upward, giving her time to check her reflection in the scratched mirror. Hair pulled back simply, minimal makeup, a dove gray blouse and black slacks that suggested competence without ostentation. She looked nothing like the queen who'd annexed Director Huang's territory in Alexander McQueen and jade earrings. She looked like someone's assistant, someone's secretary, someone negligible. The elevator doors opened. Room 404 was at the end of the hall. Jiwoo knocked twice, paused, then knocked once more. The pattern she'd been given through an encrypted message that had arrived on a burner phone she'd purchased specifically for this purpose. The door opened. Director Young Tae-sung looked exactly like his surveillance photos, 60-something, gray hair styled conservatively, expensive watch on his wrist. Behind him, Jiwoo could see 2 other men. She recognized one from intelligence briefings, Deputy Director Yoon from the Yoon organization. The other was unfamiliar, which meant he was probably someone who'd stayed carefully off the Kang Syndicate's radar. Han Ji-yeon, Director Jung said, using her real name like a weapon. Thank you for coming. She stepped inside. The room was standard Norebang fare. Leather couches, a karaoke system. No one intended to use. Bottles of whiskey on the table that were actually decent quality. The kind of place where you could have a conversation that wouldn't be overheard. Please sit. Director Jung gestured to the couch. Can I offer you a drink? No, thank you. Jiwoo remained standing. I assume you didn't invite me here for social pleasantries. A small smile crossed his face. Direct. I appreciate that. Kang Dae-hyun has taught you well. He's taught me many things, including how to recognize when someone is trying to manipulate me. Is that what you think this is? Deputy Director Yoon leaned forward, his expression skeptical. Manipulation? Isn't it? Jiwoo met his gaze steadily. You're part of the coalition forming against the Kang Syndicate's expansion. You know who I really am, or at least you think you do. And you've brought me here to either recruit me or threaten me. Possibly both. The third man laughed, a rough, gravelly sound. She's sharp. I'll give her that. Sharp enough to know she's in danger, Director Jung said, pouring himself a whiskey. Which is why I'm confused about why you came. Surely Kang Dae-hyun wouldn't approve of his queen meeting with his enemies. Kang Dae-hyun doesn't know I'm here, Jiwoo said simply. That got their attention. Interesting. Director Jung sipped his drink. Are we to interpret that as dissent in the ranks? Trouble in paradise? Interpret it however you like. I'm here because I received information suggesting you know something about my parents' deaths, and I want to know what you know. It was a calculated risk, playing the angle of the grieving daughter. But it was also true. Or true enough. These men had been operating in Seoul's underworld 15 years ago. They might have information the Kang archives didn't contain. Deputy Director Yoon exchanged a glance with Director Jung. Some silent communication passed between them. We know what the Kang family did. Yoon said, finally. We know they eliminated your parents as part of their northern consolidation. We know you were deemed negligible and allowed to survive. And we know, he paused, letting the words settle, that you've spent the last 3 months sleeping with the son of the man who ordered their execution. Yes, Jiwoo said evenly. I have. That doesn't bother you? It bothers me immensely. But it also gives me access to the organization that killed them, access to their networks, their secrets, their vulnerabilities. She let the implication hang in the air. Tell me, gentlemen, if you wanted to destroy the Kang Syndicate, where would you rather be? Outside throwing stones? Or inside, sleeping next to the throne? The silence that followed was electric. Director Jung set down his glass with deliberate care. You're proposing to work with us. From the inside. I'm proposing to consider mutually beneficial arrangements. If you have information I need, and if your goals align with mine in certain strategic areas. And what are your goals, Han Ji-yeon? She smiled then, cold, sharp, nothing like the warmth she showed Dae-hyun. The same as yours, Director Jung-nim. Power, survival, and revenge. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. By the end, Jiwoo had learned 3 crucial pieces of information. First, the coalition against the Kang Syndicate wasn't just about her. It had been forming for months, driven by families who feared being absorbed the way Director Hwang's organization had been. Her presence beside Dae-hyun was simply a convenient rallying point, the outsider who proved the old hierarchies were collapsing. Second, Minho had been in contact with at least 2 of the coalition families before returning to Seoul. Whatever game he was playing, it predated his dramatic homecoming. He'd been building alliances in the shadows, preparing for something. Third, and most important, there was a witness to her parents' murder still alive. A driver who'd been part of the hit team, now retired and living in Gangneung under a false identity. Why are you telling me this? Jiwoo had asked. Because we want you to understand, Director Jung had replied, that the Kang family's crimes go deeper than you know. And when you're ready to stop playing queen and start taking real action, we'll be waiting. She'd left without making promises, without committing to anything beyond consideration. But they'd given her the driver's location, and that was worth more than any alliance. Jiwoo returned to the penthouse at 7 p.m., exactly when she told Dae-hyun she'd be back from her spa day. She'd even stopped at a luxury spa in Gangnam and paid for treatments she hadn't used, just to have receipts if he checked. Old habits, new applications. He was waiting in the living room, a tablet in his hands, still in his work clothes minus the jacket. He looked up as she entered, his eyes scanning her face with that unnerving intensity. Good day? He asked. Relaxing, she lied, crossing to kiss him. I needed it. How were your meetings? Productive. The Busan integration is proceeding ahead of schedule. He pulled her down onto the couch beside him, his hand settling possessively on her thigh. Min Seo wants to brief us tomorrow on the coalition situation. Apparently, they've been more active than we initially assessed. Jiwoo's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression neutral. How active? Multiple meetings across the city, encrypted communications. They're organizing something. His fingers traced patterns on her leg, the touch casual, but his attention focused. We're tracking their movements, but they've gotten better at avoiding our surveillance, almost like someone is teaching them our methods. Minho, Jiwoo said. It wasn't a question. Most likely. Dae-hyun's jaw tightened. He's been having lunches with old family representatives, positioning himself as the reasonable Kang brother, the one who understands tradition. What are you going to do about him? What I should have done 3 years ago. The cold finality in his voice sent ice down her spine. Eliminate the problem permanently. He's your brother. He's a threat. Dae-hyun turned to face her fully. You, of all people, should understand that family doesn't exempt someone from consequences. My father ordered your parents killed. Should I have mourned him less because he was blood? The question hit harder than he probably intended. No, Jiwoo said quietly. I suppose not. He studied her face for a long moment, then seemed to come to some decision. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Her stomach dropped. What is it? If you had the chance to kill the people directly responsible for your parents' deaths, not my father, who's already dead, but the ones who actually carried out the hit, would you take it? The question hung between them, like a blade. Jiwoo thought about the driver in Gangneung, the witness director Jung had told her about, the man who could give her answers, and who she could make pay for what he'd done. Yes, she said. Because that, at least, was true. I would. Dae-hyun nodded, as if this confirmed something he'd suspected. Good, because I'm going to find them for you. Every person involved in the operation that killed your parents. Every person who followed my father's orders. And I'm going to give you the choice of what happens to them. She stared at him, genuinely shocked. Why? Because you're mine, he said simply. And what was done to you, to your family, is a debt the Kang Syndicate owes. I can't bring your parents back, but I can give you justice, or revenge, whichever you prefer. The offer was beautiful, terrible, exactly what she'd wanted to hear, and it complicated everything. Because now, Dae-hyun was offering her the same thing she was secretly pursuing through the coalition, which meant either he was testing her loyalty, or he genuinely wanted to give her what she needed. She couldn't tell which, and that uncertainty was dangerous. Thank you, she said, because she had to say something. That means more than you know. He pulled her closer, kissing her temple. No more secrets, remember? We face everything together now, including the ghosts. Together, Jiwoo echoed, hating herself for the lie, because she was already planning her trip to Gangneung. And Dae-hyun couldn't know about it. The message arrived at 2 a.m. Jiwoo was in bed beside Dae-hyun, not sleeping, staring at the ceiling while he breathed steadily against her shoulder. Her burner phone, hidden in a tampon box in the bathroom cabinet, because men never looked there, vibrated once. She carefully extracted herself from Dae-hyun's embrace and padded to the bathroom. The message was from an unknown number, but she recognized the code phrase, "The serpent wants to speak with the queen. Tomorrow, 3 p.m., Bukhansan parking lot. Come alone or don't come at all. Minho." Jiwoo stared at the message, her mind racing. This was his recruitment attempt. His play to turn her against Dae-hyun. She could ignore it, show Dae-hyun the message, and let him handle his brother. Or she could go, hear what Minho had to offer, learn what he knew and what he was planning, play both sides until she was strong enough to survive on her own. She deleted the message and returned to bed. Tomorrow she'd make her choice. Tonight, she let Dae-hyun pull her close, his arms a cage and a sanctuary simultaneously. And she planned her next move in the game she was playing against everyone, including herself. Bukhansan National Park was beautiful in the afternoon light. All green mountains and hiking trails where Seoul's office workers came to pretend they weren't living in a pressure cooker. The parking lot Minho had specified was at the base of one of the less popular trails, only half full on a weekday afternoon. Jiwoo arrived at 2:55 p.m., having told Dae-hyun she had a meeting with a potential supplier, another lie to add to the growing collection. Minho's car was already there, a silver Porsche Taycan that probably cost more than her childhood home. He leaned against the driver's side door, dressed casually in expensive athleisure, looking like he was about to go for a hike. Maybe he was. Maybe this entire meeting was designed to look innocuous to anyone watching. "You came?" he said as she approached. "I wasn't sure you would." "You said we needed to talk, so talk." He smiled, gesturing to the trail. Walk with me. Less chance of surveillance. My brother has ears everywhere, but even he can't bug an entire mountain. Jiwoo followed him onto the trail. They walked in silence for 5 minutes, climbing steadily until the parking lot was out of sight below them. Then Minho stopped and turned to face her. I'm going to make you an offer, he said, and I need you to really listen before you refuse. I'm listening. Join me. Help me take control of the Kang Syndicate, and when it's done, I'll give you what you really want. The complete truth about your parents' deaths and the power to destroy everyone responsible. Jiwoo kept her expression neutral. And what makes you think I want to betray Dae-hyun? Because you're smart enough to know he'll never give you what you need. Minho stepped closer, his voice dropping. My brother thinks he can keep you by offering you justice on his terms, by controlling your revenge. But you don't want controlled revenge, do you, Jiyeon? You want to burn it all down. The use of her real name was deliberate, intimate, a reminder that he knew who she really was. You're asking me to trust you, Jiwoo said. Why would I do that? Because I'm offering you a real partnership, not the pretty cage Dae-hyun has built for you, not the illusion of power while he holds all the actual control. Minho pulled out his phone, showed her a photograph. Do you know who this is? Jiwoo's breath caught. It was the driver, the witness from Gangneung. In the photo, he was walking out of a small apartment building, looking older but unmistakable. I know where he is, Minho continued. I know what he knows. And I know that Dae-hyun is also looking for him, because my dear brother thinks that by giving you this man's head, he'll secure your loyalty forever. But he's wrong. How do you know what Dae-hyun is planning? Because I know my brother. He thinks love and revenge are tools to control you. He's offering you both, but only on his terms. Only as long as you remain his perfect queen. Minho's expression hardened. But what happens when your interests diverge from his? What happens when you want something that threatens his empire? Do you really think he'll choose you over the Kang legacy? The question struck deeper than Jiwoo wanted to admit, because she'd been asking herself the same thing. What are you proposing? She asked carefully. Simple. You keep playing the loyal queen. You stay close to Dae-hyun, keep him believing you're his. But you feed me information. Help me build my case with the coalition. And when the time is right, when we've consolidated enough support, we move. We remove Dae-hyun from power, I take control of the syndicate, and you get everything you want, full access to the archives. The location of everyone who was involved in your parents' deaths, and enough power to do whatever you want with that information. And what do you get? The throne that should have been mine 3 years ago. Minho's smile was sharp. My brother won the power struggle by being more brutal, more willing to kill family members who stood in his way. But brutality isn't the same as legitimacy. The old families respect tradition. They'll accept a leadership change if it's presented correctly. A coup, Jiwoo said flatly. A transition of power, cleaner than what Dae-hyun did to take control, less bloody. He paused. Unless my brother forces it to be bloody, which knowing him, he probably will. Jiwoo processed this, her mind working through the angles. Minho was offering her exactly what she'd been planning, a way to gain enough power to eventually destroy the Kang Syndicate from within. But he wanted to use her to take down Dae-hyun first, which meant she'd be trading one cage for another, unless she could play them both against each other. I need time to think about this, she said. You have 24 hours. After that, I go forward with or without you. And Jiyeon? Minho's expression was almost sympathetic. If you're not with me, eventually I'll have to treat you as my brother's asset. And assets get neutralized. The threat was clear. Choose a side or become collateral damage. Again, Jiwoo didn't go straight back to the penthouse. Instead, she took the subway to Gangnam, then walked for an hour thinking, processing, planning. She had 3 options. 1. Tell Dae-hyun everything. Show him the messages. Reveal the meeting with Min-ho. Let him handle his brother. Prove her loyalty completely. 2. Accept Min-ho's offer. Betray Dae-hyun. Help orchestrate a coup. Gain power through Min-ho's victory. 3. Play them both. Feed Min-ho just enough information to seem cooperative while actually protecting Dae-hyun. Use the conflict between the brothers to position herself as indispensable to whoever won. Option 3 was the most dangerous. It was also the only one that gave her real agency. By the time she reached the penthouse, she'd made her decision. She was going to do something neither brother expected. She was going to force them to negotiate. And she was going to make herself the prize they were negotiating over. Dae-hyun was in his study when she arrived, reviewing documents. He looked up as she entered, his expression softening slightly. "How was your meeting?" "Productive." Jiwoo closed the door behind her. "But we need to talk about Min-ho." His attention sharpened immediately. "What about him?" "He contacted me, wanted to meet. I went." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "You did what?" "I met with him in Bukhansan an hour ago." Jiwoo kept her voice steady, even as she watched Dae-hyun's expression darken. "Before you get angry, I need you to listen. I went because I wanted to know what he was planning, and now I do." "You went alone?" Dae-hyun said, his voice deadly quiet. "To meet with a threat? Without backup? Without telling me?" "Yes, because if I'd told you, you would have stopped me, or you would have had him killed before I could learn what he knows." She crossed to his desk, placing her hands on the surface, leaning forward. "He's planning a coup. He's working with the coalition families. And he tried to recruit me to help him take you down." Dae-hyun stood slowly, his hands clenching. "And what did you tell him?" "That I'd think about it." The confession hung between them like a grenade. Then Dae-hyun moved, fast, violent, backing her against the bookshelf with his hands on either side of her head. "Explain," he demanded, "why I shouldn't assume you're about to betray me." Jiwoo met his eyes without flinching. "Because I'm not telling you this to protect him. I'm telling you so we can use it." "Use what?" "His recruitment attempt. His belief that I might be persuaded to his side." She could see Dae-hyun processing, his mind working through the implications. "He thinks I'm conflicted, that I might choose revenge over loyalty. Let him keep thinking that. Let me feed him information, controlled information that we want him to have. Let me play the double agent while we figure out exactly who he's working with and what they're planning." "Absolutely not." "Why not?" "Because it's too dangerous, because he'll be watching. For deception, because if he suspects for even a moment that you're playing him, he'll kill you to eliminate the asset. Then we make sure he doesn't suspect." Jiwoo grabbed Dae-hyun's wrist, holding tight. "This is what I do. I make people believe I'm negligible, harmless, loyal. I've been doing it my entire life. Let me do it now for us. For us or for your revenge?" The question was brutal in its accuracy. "Does it matter?" Jiwoo asked. "If the end result is that we identify and neutralize every threat to your control? If we use Min-ho's coup attempt to flush out every family member who's disloyal? You wanted no more secrets. Fine. I'm telling you exactly what I'm doing. I'm playing a dangerous game with your brother, using myself as bait, to give us the advantage. But I can't do it if you don't trust me." Dae-hyun stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then slowly, he released his grip on the bookshelf and stepped back. "You're asking me to let you walk into enemy territory, to lie to my brother convincingly enough that he believes you might betray me. To risk your life on a gambit that could go wrong in 1,000 different ways. Yes. And you expect me to just allow this? I expect you to recognize that I'm not asking for permission. Jiwoo straightened, meeting his gaze levelly. I'm already in enemy territory, Dae-hyun. The moment Minho learned who I really am, the moment the coalition started forming, I became a target. You can either help me turn that into an advantage, or you can try to lock me away for my own protection. But we both know how well that worked the first time you tried to cage me. A muscle ticked in his jaw. This is insane. This is strategy. This is what we need to do to win. And what do I do while you're playing double agent with my brother? Just wait and trust that you'll choose me in the end. Jiwoo crossed to him, taking his face in her hands. You do what you do best. You hunt down every person in that coalition. You build our own alliances. You prepare for war. And when the moment comes, when Minho makes his move, you crush him so completely that no one will ever question your control again. She could see him wavering, see the calculation in his eyes as he weighed the risks against the potential gains. Finally, he pulled her close, his mouth finding hers in a kiss that was equal parts possession and desperation. If he touches you, Dae-hyun said against her lips, I'll kill him slowly. He won't. If he suspects, he won't. If you get hurt, I won't. Jiwoo pulled back enough to look into his eyes. Trust me. I know how to survive. It's what I've always been best at. Dae-hyun's hands tightened on her waist. You're going to contact him. Tell him you're in. Yes. And you're going to feed him information that I approve first. Yes. And you're going to wear a tracker. Always. So I know where you are every second. Agreed. And Jiwoo? His expression went absolutely cold. When this is over, when we've won, you're going to tell me everything. Every lie you told, every secret you kept, every moment you considered actually betraying me. All of it. And then what? She asked quietly. And then we'll decide if we can survive the truth. It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to her. Jiwoo kissed him again, sealing the agreement, and she tried not to think about the fact that she'd just agreed to a reckoning she might not survive. She sent the message to Minho at midnight. I'm in, but we do this my way. I'll contact you with information when I have it. Don't contact me unless it's an emergency. And Minho? If you're playing me the way you think I'm playing Dae-hyun, I'll kill you myself. The response came 30 seconds later. Welcome to the winning side, Jiyeon. Try not to die before we celebrate our victory. Jiwoo deleted the conversation and returned to bed. Dae-hyun was awake, watching her in the darkness. It's done, she said. Then we're committed. Yes. He pulled her against him, his arms wrapping around her like chains. And Jiwoo lay there in the dark, playing both sides of a war that would probably destroy her, and wondered when exactly she'd stopped being the captive and become the weapon. The answer, she realized, was the moment she'd decided to stay. Everything after that was just momentum. And Seoul, beautiful, deadly Seoul, spun on below them, full of lights and secrets and blood waiting to be spilled. The game had begun. Now she just had to make sure she was still standing when it ended. The driver's name was Park Sung-chul, and he lived in a modest apartment in Gangneung, 3 hours from Seoul. Jiwoo stood across the street from his building at 6 a.m. on a gray Thursday morning, watching the windows. She'd been feeding Minho carefully curated intelligence for 2 weeks. Real enough to be valuable, sanitized enough not to actually damage Dae-hyun's operations. Playing the double agent while building her own move. This morning, she was making it. Dae-hyun thought she was meeting with a textile supplier in Dongdaemun. Minho thought she was gathering intelligence on Dae-hyun's security protocols. Neither of them knew she'd taken a train at dawn to confront the man who'd killed her parents. She'd promised no more secrets. She'd lied. The apartment building was shabby, faded concrete and rusting balconies, the kind of place where people went to disappear. Park Sung-chul had done exactly that 15 years ago, taking his payout from the Kang syndicate and vanishing into quiet retirement. But Ji-woo had found him, and today he was going to give her answers. She crossed the street and entered the building. No security, no cameras. 3rd floor, apartment 304. She'd memorized the details from the file Director Young had provided, verified them through her own research. The door was cheap, the lock cheaper. She knocked, shuffling footsteps inside. Then the door cracked open, chain still attached, and a weathered face peered out at her. "Can I help you?" Park Sung-chul's voice was rough, smoker's rasp. "I'm looking for Park Sung-chul C," Ji-woo said politely. "I have some questions about work you did in Seoul. 15 years ago, February 2009. The man's expression didn't change, but his eyes went flat. "I don't know what you're talking about." "No Hwang-gu, a hit and run that wasn't really an accident. A couple named Han Sung-min and Han Mi-young." Ji-woo kept her voice conversational. "You were the driver. The Kang syndicate paid you 50 million won and relocated you here. But you kept records, didn't you? Insurance, in case they ever decided you were a loose end." Park Sung-chul tried to close the door. Ji-woo's foot blocked it. "We can do this the easy way," she said, her voice dropping into something cold, something that had learned from Dae-hyun. "Or I can make a phone call, and 20 men will be here in 3 hours to extract the information I want before they kill you. Your choice." The lie was perfect, delivered with absolute conviction. The door opened. Park Sung-chul's apartment smelled like cigarettes and regret. He sat at a small kitchen table, hands shaking slightly as he poured himself soju at 6 a.m. "Who are you?" he asked. "Their daughter?" The glass stopped halfway to his lips. "The girl. You were supposed to be at school that day, not in the car. I was sick, stayed home, went with them to the restaurant." Ji-woo sat across from him, perfectly still. "So I saw it happen, saw the car that hit them, saw the driver's face for just a moment before you sped away." She hadn't, actually. The trauma had blurred most of that day into fragments and screams, but he didn't need to know that. "I didn't know there was a kid in the car," Park Sung-chul said, his voice breaking. "They told me it would be clean, quick, just the 2 targets. But there were 3 of us, and you did it anyway." "I had orders?" "From who?" Ji-woo leaned forward. "Who gave the order? I know it came from Kang Jae-won at the top. But who was the operational commander? Who actually organized the hit?" Park Sung-chul took a long drink of soju. "You're Kang's woman now. Everyone knows. The cleaner who became queen. Why do you care about ancient history?" "Because those were my parents, and I deserve to know every person who's responsible." He studied her for a long moment, then laughed, bitter, broken. "You want names? Fine. The order came through Director Kang's head of security, man named Cho Min-woo. He's dead now, killed in a turf war 5 years back. The team leader was a guy called Snake. Never knew his real name. He disappeared right after the job. Rumor was the Kangs eliminated him to clean up loose ends. And you?" "I was just a driver, disposable. They let me live because I kept my mouth shut." He poured another drink. "Until now, apparently." "Who else knows the details? Who else was involved in the planning?" "Why? You planning to kill everyone on the list? Because if you are, you should start with the person who actually authorized the whole operation. Kang Jae-won is dead. Not him." Park Sung-chul's smile was ugly. "The person who brought your parents to his attention in the first place. The one who identified them as a threat worth eliminating." Ji-woo's blood went cold. "What are you talking about?" The Kang operation your father witnessed, the one that made him a liability, it wasn't random. Someone tipped off your father, encouraged him to go to the police, probably hoped it would damage the Kang family's expansion. He lit a cigarette, hands still shaking. Classic strategy. Use an innocent to strike at your enemies. Your parents were pawns, girl, sacrificed in someone else's game. Who? The word came out like a knife. I don't know names, but I know it came from inside. From someone in the Kang family who wanted to slow down the northern expansion, who wanted to make Director Kang look weak. He exhaled smoke. Someone who had everything to gain from internal chaos. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. 15 years ago, there had been two brothers in the Kang family, Kang Dae-hyun's sons, one who supported aggressive expansion, one who advocated for more cautious, traditional approaches, one who eventually won the power struggle and became the silent enforcer, one who was sent to Europe in exile. Minho, Ji-woo breathed. Don't know the name, but yeah, probably. Family. Politics in these organizations. Park Sung-chul shrugged. Your parents got caught in a power struggle between brothers. Director Kang eliminated them to protect his expansion. But someone in his own family had set them up to be eliminated. Ji-woo stood abruptly, the chair scraping against linoleum. All of it. All of the pain, the trauma, the 15 years of invisibility. Not just because of Kang Jae-won's ruthlessness, but because Minho had used her parents as weapons in his fight for power. And now, he was trying to use her the same way. What are you going to do? Park Sung-chul asked. Ji-woo looked at him, this old man who'd driven the car that killed her parents, who'd taken his blood money and lived quietly with his guilt. She should kill him. Every instinct screamed for it. 15 years of grief demanding payment. But he was just another pawn, another disposable piece in the Kang family's games. You're going to write down everything you just told me, she said. Every detail you remember. Names, dates, the chain of command, everything. And then you're going to disappear. Again. Further this time. Japan, maybe? Or Thailand. Somewhere the Kang family will never find you. And if I don't, then I'll make sure they know exactly where you are. And this time, they won't pay you to retire. She pulled out an envelope of cash, 5 million won, withdrawn from her private account. This buys your statement and your disappearance. Take it or die. Your choice. He took it. Ji-woo returned to Seoul at 2 p.m. with a written confession and the knowledge that everything she thought she understood was wrong. Minho hadn't just known about her parents' deaths. He'd caused them, used them to strike at his own father, to undermine the expansion that would strengthen Dae-hyun's position. And when it failed to stop the consolidation, when Kang Jae-won proved more ruthless than Minho expected, her parents had simply become collateral damage in a failed political move. She wanted to scream, to break something, to burn the entire city down. Instead, she went to the one person who could help her weaponize the truth. She went to Dae-hyun. He was in his office at Kang Group headquarters when she arrived unannounced. Min-seo tried to stop her. He's in a meeting. But Ji-woo walked past her and opened the door anyway. Dae-hyun was at his desk with 3 senior executives. He looked up, saw her expression, and dismissed them with a single gesture. Out. They left. The door closed. What happened? Dae-hyun asked, already moving around the desk. Ji-woo pulled out Park Sung-chul's written statement and placed it on his desk. I found the driver who killed my parents, made him talk, and I learned something you need to know. Dae-hyun picked up the pages, reading quickly. She watched his expression darken as he absorbed the information. Watched the moment he reached the part about internal family involvement. Minho, he said quietly. He used my parents to attack your father's expansion. Set them up as witnesses, hoping it would create problems. When it didn't work the way he planned, they were eliminated anyway. Jiwoo's voice was steady, but her hands were clenched. Everything. My entire life, my parents' deaths, all of it. Because your brother was playing power games 15 years ago. Dae-hyun set down the statement with careful precision. Where's the driver now? Gone. I paid him to disappear and warned him what would happen if he didn't. You should have killed him. Probably. Jiwoo met his eyes. But he wasn't the one who really killed them. Minho was. Your father was. The entire system that treats people like disposable pieces was. One old man with guilt and lung cancer wasn't going to change that. Dae-hyun was silent for a long moment, processing. Then he pulled out his phone and sent a message. What are you doing? Jiwoo asked. Calling a family meeting. Tonight, emergency session. His expression was absolutely lethal. My brother has been playing both sides for 15 years, using our family's operations for his own agenda, trying to engineer a coup. And now I find out he's responsible for creating the very situation that put you in danger. He looked up at her. This ends tonight. Dae-hyun? No. He crossed to her, framing her face with his hands. You've been playing double agent, feeding him false information, putting yourself at risk. And the entire time, he's the one who destroyed your family, who made you into what you are. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. I'm going to give you what you wanted, Jiwoo. I'm going to give you revenge. But we're doing it together, and we're doing it tonight. He'll know it's a trap. Good. Let him know. Let him come anyway, because he's arrogant enough to think he can still win. Dae-hyun's smile was sharp. We're going to end this. All of it. The coalition, the threats, my brothers, ambitions. And when it's done, there will be no question about who controls this empire. Jiwoo should have felt vindicated, triumphant. Instead, she felt the weight of what was coming. Because tonight, one way or another, everything would change. The meeting was set for 9 p.m. at the Kang family estate in Gyeongbuk-dong. The estate was old money-made manifest, traditional architecture, updated with modern security, sprawling grounds behind high walls, the kind of place where Seoul's elite conducted business that couldn't happen in public. Jiwoo arrived with Dae-hyun at 8:45. She wore black, not the fashionable Alexander McQueen from negotiation dinners, but tactical black. Fitted pants, a silk blouse that wouldn't restrict movement, low boots. Dae-hyun had given her a gun that morning, a compact Glock that currently rested in a holster at the small of her back. Do you know how to use it? He'd asked. Point and shoot, she'd replied. Close enough. Now they walked through the estate's main hall, past family portraits and expensive art, toward the private conference room where Kang family business had been conducted for 3 generations. Min Seo was already there, along with 4 of Dae-hyun's most trusted security personnel. The head of the family's legal operations, 2 senior syndicate directors who'd proven loyal during previous internal conflicts, and Minho. He sat at the conference table, looking relaxed, expensive suit, confident smile, like he didn't know he was walking into an execution. Hyung, he greeted as they entered. Jiwoo, what an ominous summons. Emergency family meeting. Very dramatic. What's the occasion? You are, Dae-hyun said, moving to the head of the table. Sit down. Everyone sit down. The atmosphere in the room shifted immediately. The security personnel positioned themselves at the doors. Min Seo's expression went carefully neutral. Minho's smile faded. What is this? He asked. This, Dae-hyun said, is a reckoning. He nodded to Min Seo, who activated a screen on the wall. Documents appeared. Intelligence reports, communications logs, financial transfers. For the past month, Dae-hyun began, you've been working with a coalition of families opposed to our expansion. The Young family from Incheon, The Yoon organization? Several independents. You've been positioning yourself as an alternative to my leadership, suggesting that the old families would be more comfortable with a traditional approach. Minho's expression remained calm, but his eyes went sharp. Monitoring your brother's communications? That's paranoid even for you. Not paranoid. Thorough. Dae-hyun gestured to the screen. You've been funding their operations through shell companies in Geneva, providing them with intelligence about our security protocols, planning a coordinated move to undermine my authority during the annual summit next month. Allegedly, Minho said smoothly. You have documents that could be interpreted that way. Doesn't mean you also, Jiwoo interrupted, stepping forward, orchestrated the situation that led to my parents' deaths 15 years ago. The room went absolutely silent. Minho's gaze swung to her, his expression unreadable. Excuse me? February 2009. You were trying to slow down your father's northern expansion, undermine his aggressive consolidation strategy. So you found a civilian, my father, and made sure he witnessed a Kang operation. Made sure he went to the police, hoping it would create a scandal that damaged your father's credibility. She could see recognition flickering in Minho's eyes, see him calculating, trying to determine how much she actually knew. That's a fascinating theory, he said carefully. Do you have any proof? Jiwoo placed Park Sung-chul's written statement on the table. The driver who killed my parents remembers being told it was a cleanup operation for a situation created by internal family politics. He didn't know your name specifically, but the timing, the operational details, it all points to you. Minho picked up the statement, reading quickly. When he looked up, his expression had changed. The charming facade was gone, replaced by something colder. So you've been busy? He said. Playing detective while pretending to work with me. Did my brother put you up to this? Promise you revenge if you helped him trap me? I put myself up to this, Jiwoo said. Because you killed my parents for political leverage. And then, 15 years later, you tried to use me the same way. You were using me too, Minho countered. Feeding me false intelligence. Playing double agent. Don't pretend you're innocent in this game, Ji-yeon. You chose to play it. The difference, Dae-hyun said, his voice cutting through the tension, is that she was playing it to protect what's hers. You were playing it to destroy what you never had the strength to hold in the first place. Minho stood abruptly. You're going to lecture me about strength? You took control of this family by killing everyone who opposed you. You eliminated cousins, uncles, anyone with a claim to leadership. And you think that makes you legitimate? It makes me in control. Dae-hyun's voice was flat, cold. Which is what actually matters. Not tradition, not legitimacy, power. And you don't have enough of it to challenge me. Don't I? Minho's smile returned, sharp and dangerous. Because I have something you don't, Ha-young. I have allies who are here, right now, waiting for my signal. The doors burst open. 6 men flooded into the room, armed, moving with military precision. Not Kang security, coalition forces. They must have infiltrated the estate, positioned themselves during the meeting. Dae-hyun's security personnel reached for weapons, but they were outnumbered and outpositioned. Stand down, Minho said calmly, pulling a gun from inside his jacket. All of you, this doesn't have to get messy. You brought armed insurgents into the family estate, Dae-hyun said, his voice deadly quiet. You've declared war. I've declared a change in leadership. The coalition families are outside, another 20 men. They'll be here in 2 minutes if I don't signal that everything is fine. So here's what's going to happen. Minho gestured with the gun. You're going to transfer operational control to me. Quietly, cleanly. And in exchange, I'll let you live. You can go to Europe, run the operations there, live comfortably in exile the way I did. And if I refuse, then you die. Tonight, along with anyone who stands with you. The gun swung toward Jiwoo, including your queen. Dae-hyun moved, fast, putting himself between Minho and Jiwoo. You want to kill me? Fine. But she's not part of this. She's been part of this since birth, Minho said. Her parents were collateral damage in family politics. She's been collateral damage her entire life. Nothing changes. Something cold and sharp crystallized in Jiwoo's chest. Collateral damage, negligible, disposable. All the words that had defined her for 15 years. Not anymore. You're wrong, she said, stepping out from behind Dae-hyun. Everything changes. She pulled the gun from the holster at her back and shot Minho. The sound was deafening in the confined space. Minho staggered back, blood blooming across his shoulder. Not a kill shot. Jiwoo's aim wasn't good enough for headshots, but enough to drop his weapon. Then everything erupted into chaos. Dae-hyun's security engaged the coalition forces. Gunfire echoed through the estate's halls. Min-seo was on her phone, calling in reinforcements. One of Minho's men grabbed Jiwoo, trying to use her as a shield. Dae-hyun broke the man's arm with clinical efficiency and put 2 bullets in his chest. Stay behind me, he shouted at Jiwoo. But she wasn't hiding anymore. She picked up Minho's dropped gun, better than her own, and fired at one of the coalition soldiers trying to flank them. Hit him in the leg. Not elegant, but effective. Dae-hyun was moving through the room like a force of nature, every shot precise, every movement economical. This was what he'd been before she met him, the silent enforcer, the monster who'd taken control of the Kang Syndicate by being more ruthless than anyone else. And Jiwoo was fighting beside him, not behind him, not protected, beside him, equal. The firefight lasted 90 seconds. When it was over, 4 coalition soldiers were dead, 2 were wounded and disarmed, and Minho was on his knees, clutching his bleeding shoulder. Dae-hyun's reinforcements flooded the estate. 30 men, heavily armed, locking down every entrance. Outside, the coalition family's backup forces found themselves surrounded by Kang Syndicate soldiers who'd been positioned in anticipation of exactly this scenario. Because Dae-hyun had known, had predicted Minho's move, had let it happen in a controlled environment where he could end it permanently. The coup attempt was over before it truly began. Minho looked up at his brother, blood seeping between his fingers, and laughed bitterly. You planned this. All of it. The meeting, the confrontation. You wanted me to make my move. Yes, Dae-hyun said simply. You were always going to try. Better to let you choose the time and place than crush you when you did. And her? Minho's gaze swung to Jiwoo. Was she part of your plan too? Or did she surprise you? Dae-hyun glanced at Jiwoo, something complicated flickering in his expression. She surprised me. Jiwoo lowered her gun, her hands shaking with adrenaline. She'd just shot a man, just fought in a gunfight, just chosen, definitively, irrevocably, to stand with Dae-hyun against everyone else, including the ghost of Han Ji-yeon, who would have wanted different revenge. What happens now? Minho asked. Dae-hyun pulled out his phone, composed a message, sent it. Now the coalition families learn what happens when they move against the Kang Syndicate. Min-seo has teams positioned at each of their headquarters. The Jung family, the Yoon organization, all of them. By morning, they'll either be absorbed into our operations or eliminated. Their choice. And me? Your family. So I'm giving you one chance. Dae-hyun crouched down, meeting his brother's eyes. You leave. Tonight. You disappear so completely that even our intelligence network can't find you. You never come back to Seoul. You never contact anyone in this family again. You become a ghost. Or I kill you right here and tell our mother you died in an accident. The brothers stared at each other for a long moment. Then Min-ho nodded. I'll need medical attention before I can travel. You'll get it, along with enough money to start over somewhere far away. Dae-hyun stood. But Min-ho, if you ever threaten what's mine again, if you ever come near her again, I'll forget your family. Understood? Understood. Dae-hyun gestured to Min-seo. Get him patched up and on a plane. I don't care where, just far. As they hauled Min-ho away, he looked back at Ji-woo one last time. You chose him, he said. Even knowing what his family did to yours. Even knowing you'll never be anything but his possession. You're wrong, Ji-woo said quietly. I didn't choose him. I chose me. I chose power over revenge. I chose the future over the past. And I chose to stand beside him as an equal, not as anyone's possession. We'll see, Min-ho said. We'll see how long that lasts. Then he was gone. The estate slowly cleared as teams dispersed to handle the coalition families as bodies were removed, as the evidence of violence was methodically erased. By midnight, it was just Ji-woo and Dae-hyun in the conference room, surrounded by the aftermath of the coup that never was. You shot him, Dae-hyun said, turning to face her. When he threatened you, you shot him. Yes. You fought. During the firefight, you could have taken cover, stayed safe. But you fought. Yes. Why? Ji-woo set down the gun, Min-ho's gun still in her hand, and met Dae-hyun's eyes. Because I'm tired of being protected. Tired of being the asset, the weakness, the thing you have to defend. I wanted to prove I could stand beside you. Really beside you. You did, Dae-hyun said quietly. But, Ji-woo, you told me no more secrets. Yet you went to Gangneung without telling me. Found the driver on your own. Gathered evidence independently. I know. That's not how this works. That's not trust. You're right. Ji-woo took a breath. And I'm sorry. But I needed to do it myself. Needed to face that part of my past on my own terms. Not as your queen, not as your partner. As Han Ji-yeon, getting the answers she deserved. And did you? Get the answers you needed? Yes. She thought about Park Sung-chul, about his confession, about the bitter knowledge that her parents had been pawns in a game they never even knew they were playing. I learned that revenge doesn't bring them back, that killing everyone responsible won't undo what happened, that the only real power I have is choosing what I become despite what was done to me. Dae-hyun closed the distance between them, his hands gentle on her face, despite the blood still on them. And what have you become? Someone who scares me sometimes, Ji-woo admitted. Someone who can shoot a man without hesitating? Someone who can stand in a room full of violence and not break? Someone who chose you, even knowing your family destroyed mine. Do you regret it? The choice? She thought about it, really thought about it. About Han Ji-yeon, the 11-year-old girl at her parents' funeral. About Ji-woo Park, the invisible cleaner who scrubbed crime scenes. About the Queen of Seoul's Underworld, who just fought a battle and won. No, she said finally. I don't regret it. But Dae-hyun, I need you to understand something. I'm not just yours. I'm mine. My power, my choices, my empire. I'll build it with you, beside you, but not for you, not as your possession. I know, he said, and the admission seemed to cost him something. I've always known, from the moment you chose to stay when I gave you the key, from the moment you transformed yourself from captive to queen. You were never really mine to keep. Only mine if you chose to stay. I'm choosing to stay, Ji-woo said, but on my terms, as your equal, your partner, not your beautiful weapon or your protected asset. My equal, Dae-hyun repeated, testing the words. Then he smiled. Rare, genuine. The old families are going to hate it? Good, Let them hate it. Let them see what happens when they underestimate someone they dismissed as negligible. He kissed her then, and it felt different from every other kiss they'd shared. Not possession, not claiming. Partnership. By dawn, the consolidation was complete. The young family from Incheon had accepted absorption into the Kang Syndicate network. The Yoon organization had chosen elimination, their headquarters raided, their leadership arrested or killed, their operations seized. The smaller coalition families had scattered, understanding that opposing the Kang Empire was a death sentence. Min-ho was on a plane to Sao Paulo, with enough money to start over and a bullet wound to remind him why he should never come back. And Jiwoo stood on the penthouse balcony, watching Seoul wake up beneath her, and understood what she'd become. Not Han Ji-yeon, not Jiwoo Park. Something new, something forged from both identities. A woman who'd survived being collateral damage and become a queen. A woman who'd chosen power over revenge, but who would never forget the cost. A woman who'd stand beside Kang Dae-hyun as an equal, or burn his empire down around him. Dae-hyun joined her on the balcony, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He passed her one. "Min-seo wants to do a press release," he said, "making your position official, not just my partner, but a director of the Kang Group, equal authority, equal power. The families need to see that you're not just..." "Your mistress?" Jiwoo supplied. "My weakness?" he corrected. "They need to see that you're the strength, that together we're unstoppable." "And are we? Unstoppable?" Dae-hyun looked out at the city, their city, bought with blood and secrets and 15 years of ghosts. "We'd better be. Because after tonight, everyone knows. Knows who you are, what you're capable of, what we mean to each other. The families who didn't fear you before will fear you now. And the ones who wanted you dead will want it even more," Jiwoo finished. "I know. I'm ready. Are you?" He turned to face her fully. "Because there's no going back now. No more invisibility. No more hiding. You're committed to this life, this empire, this war that never really ends." "I've been committed since the moment you locked that penthouse door," Jiwoo said. "Everything since then has just been me catching up to the decision I made that first night." "What decision was that?" "To survive, no matter what it cost, no matter who I had to become." She sipped her coffee, tasting the bitterness, the perfection, the price of everything she'd claimed. "My parents were killed by this world, but I've conquered it. And I think they'd understand. Maybe not forgive, but understand." Dae-hyun's arm came around her waist, pulling her close. And Jiwoo, Han Ji-yeon, Jiwoo Park, the Queen of Seoul, leaned into the embrace of the man whose family had destroyed hers. Chose him. Chose this. Chose power. Because in the end, that was the only revenge that mattered. Not killing the people responsible, but becoming so powerful that no one could ever make her collateral damage again. Below them, Seoul glittered in the dawn light. Glass towers and neon signs, blood and silk and secrets. Their empire, built on ghosts, ruled by a woman who'd been invisible until she decided to be seen. And the city would never be the same. And that is the end of part 2. But the war for Seoul is just beginning. If you enjoyed The Queen's Gambit, please like this video. It helps the channel immensely. If you haven't joined us yet, subscribe now. And again, if you didn't get a chance earlier, I read every comment. Tell me where you're watching from and if you're Team Love or Team Revenge. I'll see you in the next chapter.